What's up, guys? This is Ian here, coach of your Ladner Lantern, bringing you guys the second episode of the NCL Season 2 playoff picture. This is a series where we will talk about the standings and the overall standings of the league and how it affects the playoff teams moving forward as we head into the back half of the season, as well as who can be eliminated and who can clinch playoffs. So, as you guys know from watching the Week 7 playoff picture, Ben and the Tampa Bay Weasels were eligible to clinch playoffs. Is that my no? Sorry. Next slide after that. So we'll talk about the playoff seeding rules first, actually. First rule is that the division winners automatically make playoffs. So if you win your division, which is there are 4 divisions of 3 teams, therefore all 4 division winners automatically make playoffs, and they have to do nothing besides win their division. Second rule is the next best records from each conference will take the final 2 playoff spots. Therefore, 8 teams will make playoffs. So 4 teams from each conference make playoffs. 2 division winners, 2 wildcard teams with the next best 2 records. Generally, that's seeds 1 through 4. However, that could be untrue. It hasn't so far, but it could be. Third rule is that placing is determined based on number of wins, then the differential, then conference wins, which is wins within your own conference. So you can have a maximum of 5 of those. Then your head-to-head record if somehow you played in Week 12, because Week 12 is a randomized matchup. And then if there's still a tiebreaker match will occur. So I don't know how plausible that is. I think it's possible, though. If I remember correctly, last week I talked about it and I was like, oh, that'll never happen. But I actually do think that it is possible. Just give me 1 sec to double check that. Yeah, so I actually think that Dom and Daniel might play there's a potential possibility that Dom and Daniel play a tiebreaker match in week after week 12. So we might have to push playoffs back depending on records there. Obviously, there's still 4 weeks to change that. But again, moving forward here, Ben had the chance to clinch, and he did. So Ben ended up beating Jed and the Adelaide Overheat, which clinched him his playoff spot. It was contingent on either Nacho and Magic losing or Ben winning. And Ben ended up winning, which clinched him his playoff spot. He still has yet to clinch the division. He does need at least 2 more wins and me to lose to clinch the division. We're not really going to get into too many details about that until we get closer to it actually being true. Well, at least 1 week ahead of it being true. There are no eliminated teams yet, and Ben is the only successful team to clinch. I had the opportunity to clinch, but Nacho ended up winning his game, so I couldn't clinch because I needed to win my match and Magic and Nacho to lose. So by winning my match against Magic, I had 2/3 of my clinching criteria met. Same with Cade. He ended up winning his match and Magic lost, so he had 2/3 of his met. But Nacho winning really spun a hole in those plans. We could have had 3 people clinched already, all from the same conference actually, but instead we only have 1. So Ben clinched. Oh well, the rest of us have to move on with our lives. So because of that, he's going to get a Y in his playoff designation, which means that he's clinched a playoff berth, either a wild card or is in line to potentially win the division as well. That's all true about Ben's team. There is no teams with the designation Z yet. No team has clinched the division quite yet, and there's no team with X yet. But potentially in Week 9, and we'll talk about that as we go through. There's no teams that have been mathematically eliminated just yet. So let's look at the divisions then heading into Week 9 here. Phil actually has not played his match yet, but it doesn't matter. He will still be at the he will still be first in the division after this week. Potentially not first in the conference because Matt could overthrow him if Matt beats him, but Matt and Phil haven't played yet, so we won't know that for sure. But he will stay first in the Little River division uh, because what am I thinking? I don't remember what I'm thinking. Oh, because Daniel lost. There we go. Sorry, I'm just losing my train of thought. And Jay is still last in the Little division over there. And in the Oldale division, Matt is still going to be first in the division regardless of his match because both Dom and Jed lost. Dom and Jed started off the season really well, and they're sort of falling into a skid now. They're both going to need to pick things up if they want to make playoffs. One of them will make playoffs. There's no doubt in my mind about that because I really don't think that Jay is going to make a run at the end of the season to make playoffs. But technically, Only one of them is going to make playoffs, so it really needs to come down to that sort of stuff. In fact, I believe this week, yeah, this week, week 9, is their head-to-head matchup. That is huge because, again, like I said, only one of them is going to make playoffs at this stage. Potentially, both of them could still, if Daniel somehow has a free fall at the end of the season and doesn't end up making playoffs. But he does have a game on both of them, so it seems likely to me that only one of those two teams is going to make playoffs. Cade and the Krabby Cabbies, same situation as last week. Because Nacho won, he still technically hasn't clinched yet, because if Cade loses the rest of his matches, Nacho wins the rest of his matches, Nacho could potentially win that division, technically still. I don't think it's likely, but it's possible. So yeah, Nacho picking up that win was really annoying and threw a bunch of wrenches into a bunch of things, but it's big for Nacho because it keeps him in the running. Magic is essentially out, but technically still has not been eliminated yet because he still has a chance to tie Austin's record. And now again, that depends on Nacho losing a bunch of games as well. But the best Magic can do is the wildcard 2 spot, which is the final playoff spot. So we'll talk about Magic a little bit later on. Ben obviously has the Y next to his name now because he's clinched playoffs with his 7-1 record. Nacho cannot win 5 more games to reach 7 wins, and Magic can't win 6 to reach 7 wins either. Therefore, Ben clinched. That's pretty much all it comes down to. I was really close, but Nacho can still technically catch me, and Austin is still technically catchable by both Nacho and Magic. In terms of the conferences, again, 1 and 2 in the Hoenn Conference can still trade places. They're Daniel has too low of a differential, so Matt can't drop lower than second. It could stay exactly how it is, or it could flip. The rest of the standings are, of course, current and accurate. So uh, currently, you've got the Cleveland Cavaliers taking that wildcard 2 spot, and the Adelaide Overheat just looking on from the outside. I can't remember exactly what the differential difference is between them. It's 3. There's a 3 differential between them, and they haven't played each other yet. But Dom does have 1 conference win over Jet as well, so that's important for tie-breaking scenarios. You guys saw this last week. It's just showing off that. But worthy to note that both the Cleveland Cavaliers and the Adelaide Overheat are both still in the running. So Adelaide Overheat, there are no clinching scenarios, no elimination scenarios yet. This will change as the weeks progress, obviously. And if he ends up beating Dom, then that could be really good for him. Um, yeah, so Austin and the Atlantis Raptors do have a clinching scenario this week. This depends on Nacho losing, because then Nacho would be at 2 wins. And if Austin wins and Nacho loses, then Nacho would be at 2 wins and Austin would be at 6, and he would be uncatchable with only 3 weeks left after week 9. So that is his one clinching scenario. If he wins, then there's something else that happens, and we'll talk about that later. And so his best bet is to win anyways, even if Nacho loses. That's really what it comes down to here. It's a little bit more complicated because he does need both things to happen to clinch, but next week that'll change drastically, potentially. No elimination scenarios yet because he's doing really well still. Dom and the Cleveland Cavaliers, same as Jed and the Adelaide Overheat. There's nothing yet, but that'll change as the weeks progress. Nacho and the Detroit Terrivolts, he technically cannot be eliminated this week, can't he? No, hang on. Did I just not write it out? I think he actually can be eliminated. Um, if he loses and the Atlantis Raptors win, then he's eliminated. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so I'm sorry, guys. I didn't write it on here because it slipped my mind. I've had so much going on, and it just didn't pop into my head that he could be eliminated. But Nacho can be eliminated this week if he loses and the Atlantis Raptors win, then he will mathematically be eliminated. And I'm just going to write this down on my sheet here really quickly so that I know to write that down in the description and things like that. So week 9 can be eliminated if Detroit Terrivolts lose week 9 and Atlanta Raptors win week 9. Yeah, so that's unfortunate. Then Detroit Terrivolts eliminated. So I looked at two teams for possible elimination scenarios, and I forgot to mention Nacho in my own thoughts. So sorry about that, Nacho, and sorry about that to everyone watching. My mistake, but there you go. It's fixed in terms of the commentary, and it won't be fixed on the slide because I'm doing this live and I'm not going to edit this. But for next week, it will be changed if he does get eliminated. Matt does not even have any clinching scenarios, even if his week 8 match was done. Not quite yet. So it really depends on that, and we'll just sort of have to go with that. Uh, Cade in the Krabby Dabbies has the most clinching scenarios this week. He can make playoffs and win the division. If Nacho and the Detroit Terribles lose, he makes playoffs and his division right away. And he can make playoffs and win his division if he wins this week. So either of those scenarios, either Nacho loses or Cade wins, both of those clinch him his division, and he's guaranteed that divisional spot, which would be the first division title. Uh, I'm really hoping that it's not that he wins because he plays me. So I'm kind of hoping that it's that Nacho loses, but Nacho is playing Jay in the UNC Wingles. So it does seem reasonably likely that Nacho may not lose this week and could force, could extend his longevity, his lifespan in this season for another week there. Myself, I can make playoffs again if Nacho loses. I make playoffs, and if I win, then I make playoffs as well, because both of those scenarios put me out of range of Nacho being able to catch up to me in terms of wins, and so I would guarantee myself either at least the wildcard 1 or wildcard 2 slots if those happen. Daniel is not quite there in terms of clinching because he's only got a game on the 5th seed right now, or the second worst seed, I guess. 5th seed doesn't really matter. So not quite for Daniel, but he's getting there. Magic can be eliminated. So Magic is the first team that can be eliminated that I had written down, because Nacho obviously is the first. But Magic can be eliminated if he loses or if the Atlanta Raptors win. Then he is in a really bad spot. So one of those seems more likely than the other. Probably that he loses, given Austin's opponent this week, and who Magic has to play. Magic does have to play Matt, who's on a tear at the end of this season right now. And so it's looking like Magic is probably going to be eliminated in Week 9 and will be able to play spoiler for the rest of the season. Although technically, before his match, he does still have a lifeline here. If he wins, then he does stay alive temporarily. But if he wins and Austin wins, then it doesn't matter because he's still eliminated. So his destiny is no longer in his hands. He cannot control his destiny in terms of the playoff picture anymore. And we'll be looking to see what comes out of that. Ben has already been clinched for playoffs, and he cannot clinch his division yet, so we won't talk about that just yet. Worth note, he cannot be eliminated anymore because he's clinched for playoffs. So there you go. Jay and the UNC Wingles, I actually had a ton of stuff written out, and it depended on Dom winning his match against Cade, and it depended on Daniel winning his match against Jed, and neither of those things happened. So Jay cannot be eliminated in Week 9. But if you guys are curious, I'll just talk about it. Jay could have been eliminated if he lost Week 9, which he did, and the Green Bay Goliath hit 5 wins, which we don't know yet, and the Cleveland Cavaliers hit 5 wins, which he couldn't. Because he lost Week 8. So if Dom had won Week 8 and then won Week 9, and Daniel and the Seattle Raptors had to hit 5 wins as well, or the Adelaide Overheat had to hit 5 wins. It was either Cleveland Cavaliers hit 5 wins or Adelaide Overheat hit 5 wins. Whatever. As long as there were 4 teams with 5 wins, then Jay couldn't possibly do it in Week 9. So sorry. Oh, I actually misspoke. Sorry. It's Week 9 if Jay loses Week 9, which hasn't happened yet. So we wouldn't even have known that for sure. But 4 teams had to hit 5 wins above him, and he had to lose Week 9, and then he could have been eliminated from playoffs. But he can't be eliminated in Week 9. Potentially can be eliminated in Week 10. Last but not least, Phil and the Wiltshire War Turtles. There is a scenario where he does clinch. However, he does have to win Week 8 for that to happen. And I don't know why I said AO or CE lose because they play each other. So one of them has to lose. So I sort of wrote that out wrong. But if he wins Week 8 and Week 9, then he's guaranteed. Because they play each other, that point is moot. And so Phil just needs to win his week 8 match and his week 9 match, and he will be clinched for playoffs. In fact, no, he won't have quite clinched his division yet because Daniel's right on his heels. But if he wins both of those, then he will clinch playoffs, which would be great for Phil. So that, I believe, is it. Let me just look at my slide deck. Yep, that's it for my slides. And yeah, so this has been long, but there you go. That's what happens when I'm talking about playoff scenarios and stuff like that, and I'm screwing it up. So that's going to be it for me, and I'll see you guys for the week 9 playoff picture.